Herod the Great built a new city on the Mediterranean Sea, and he named it Caesarea Maritima, Caesarea on the sea, to honor the emperor. It was about 30 miles north of the modern Israeli city of Tel Aviv. The Bible land had no good natural harbor along the Mediterranean, so Herod the Great built an artificial harbor, the first time this had ever been done. Great walls were built out into the sea to protect the ships in the harbor. These walls had stones weighing several tons. In recent years, there's been extensive underwater archaeology here at Caesarea.
The harbor of Caesarea was the major Roman harbor during the end of the 1st century BC and most of the 1st century AD. It was the biggest harbor on the eastern Mediterranean coast. It was built by Herod the Great. And the Roman legions that besieged Jerusalem and finally conquered Jerusalem and desecrated the temple in 70 AD, most of them at least, landed in this harbor in Caesarea.
To create this harbor, Herod built 2 enormous breakwaters out into the Mediterranean Sea. The south breakwater began here at the present harbor wall and went 1/3 of a mile out into the sea. It was 200 feet wide. To build this breakwater, Herod the Great used cut stones, 50 feet long and 18 feet high, and his builders somehow moved them out into the Mediterranean Sea and lowered them down into 120 feet of water. What made this harbor possible was hydraulic concrete that will harden underwater. The Romans had learned the secret of hydraulic concrete only 25 years earlier, and Herod used it here at Caesarea. Underwater archaeologists have recently located a great block of concrete, 50 feet square, that was poured and hardened at the bottom of the sea. Herod built the present small city around his harbor with public buildings and temples, warehouses and piers. Current excavations have uncovered one of those piers. And here is a great stone ring where ships would have been tied up at the pier. There was a row of large vaulted warehouses behind the piers where the cargoes from the ships could be stored. These have been excavated in recent years. You can see the typical Herodian stones with margins around the edges in the walls of these storehouses. Herod the Great dedicated 3 of his cities to the Emperor Augustus. They were Tiberias, Samaria, and Caesarea, and he built temples to Augustus in each one of these cities.
We are right here in front of a temple to Augustus that Herod the Great built in honor of the Roman Caesar. Here in Caesarea, he had a number of these temples. This one was all lined in marble with 3 niches, the center of which had a statue of Augustus and was venerated here both by Herod's men and by the Roman garrison that was stationed here.
Caesarea did not have a natural water supply, so Herod built an aqueduct to bring water from the Carmel Mountains to the north. There are 6 miles of these arches, but most of them are still buried under the sand. However, the aqueduct did not reach all the way to the mountains, so Herod cut a tunnel through the limestone another 6 miles to bring the water from the Carmel Range to the point where the aqueduct began. But as we see in one of the arches, there are really 2 aqueducts side by side. By the 2nd century, Caesarea was so large that Herod's aqueduct could not supply the city with water, so the Emperor Hadrian built another aqueduct alongside Herod's. Hadrian's new aqueduct is on the right side. Herod also built a theater at Caesarea seating 4,000 people and facing the Mediterranean Sea. It was excavated in the 1960s by Italian archaeologists, and it's been restored and is now used for concerts and programs. Cornelius, the first Gentile Christian, lived here in Caesarea, and as a Roman army officer, he probably came to concerts in this theater. Here in the theater, the archaeologists found this stone with an inscription, Pontius Pilate, prefect of Judea. You can see the name in Latin, Pilatus. This is very important because it's the only extra-biblical evidence of Pilate that has ever been found. Other important inscriptions have been found at Caesarea. These are Christian inscriptions from the 3rd century. One is covered up with sand to protect it, and we have to clean off the sand before we can see it. We pour a little water on it and then we can read the inscription. It tells Christians, don't be afraid of the authorities if you're doing right. And we cover it again with sand. Nearby, there's another round inscription. It's a verse from Romans 13, admonishing Christians to obey the government. Caesarea was very important in New Testament history. Philip lived here. Cornelius was converted here. Paul was imprisoned here for 2 years and set sail from Herod's harbor for Rome. In later Christian history, when the Emperor Constantine ordered 50 copies of the Bible made for churches, they were copied here at Caesarea. The harbor and its city were remarkable feats of ancient building. Perhaps Josephus said it best when he wrote, "At Caesarea, as nowhere else, Herod displayed the grandeur of his character."